Yeah, I mean, it sounds like the that implementation feels very much like agile development, right? Where you're like agile web delivery, where it's kind of
Yeah.
over time. And that's the other thing that's nice about it is if you build that way, if you build this very simple, for BBC, for example, news feed, very simple, nothing, and then slowly add to it over time, you can continually enhance it and always think of it as a moving target. I kind of like that. It also fits in well with elegant degradation, right? This idea that some features will not be enabled because you've detected, but because the browser can't handle it, the device can't handle it, whatever. So I do like that idea. Are we seeing much of that right now from any of you guys? Are we seeing delivery of some content and then conceptually enhancing that content?
But again, that makes sense for BBC. It may not make sense for like Twitter, or it may not make sense for Gmail or Yahoo Mail, right? Because that is an application by native itself, and
Yeah.
you can't just render minimalistic content and enhance it further. Again, it depends. For example, for PayPal, if you take, right, their core is about money and things like that, and I think that's where they should be also doing, like, render what is needed for the user and then do some stuff later.
Just addressing the Yahoo concern. So I actually developed the redesign of the new Yahoo homepage as well. Of course, not alone, but with many people. And once I arrived in the project, actually there was one engineer that made the new redesign entirely responsive. Everything was beautifully responsive. So things were good to read on if you resize the viewport and you do all kinds of crazy stuff. The reason why that didn't work for Yahoo, and maybe we could revisit that, but the number one reason first is the ads. Again, if your ads are not responsive, you cannot do anything, right? And let's be honest, that's what pay us, right? Pay our salary. So we cannot just say, hey, from now on we just accept responsive ads and that's it, right? Well, that was a huge challenge. Requires a lot of, and I mean, the ad industry also needs to evolve a little bit in that concept before we actually go full responsive. And the other thing about that is how much. One thing we need to think about is how much value the responsive design actually brings to your users. Is that going to affect anyway the way you develop your website and how fast you can deliver the content, right? So if you think about responsive and it's in the same device, sometimes you're actually punishing your user instead of making it better because you're adding extra CSS overrides on top of the experience that they are used to. So, and of course for Yahoo.com, what you really want is to be as fast as possible. We really wanted to reduce the loading time as fast as we could, and we detected that if we start going crazy about responsive web design for every single thing on the page, we could actually affect a lot the performance. I mean, not a lot, but I would say there's a significant download time that your user will have to download. So that's why I said that, in my opinion, when you access Yahoo.com on mobile, then yes, then we have all those responsive things that we had in a media query. Actually, we remove the media query and just serve that CSS, And it's actually a little bit better because we don't have to override anything. So you start from scratch and you just do the mobile first design.
It sounds like eBay's methodology too.
Yeah, I mean, very, very similar. I agree to this point. But again, like for a help page, for example, it doesn't make sense for us to make it totally adaptive for every web page to do that same thing. Again, some of the browse pages, it makes sense to make it responsive. So, but Yahoo, it totally makes sense with millions of traffic coming. I don't want every of my user to download all the JavaScript that a desktop needs, all the CSS that a desktop needs, and things like that.
One thing that I would like to point out, which is very interesting, is that now more and more we're getting like these hybrid devices, where you have like Surface or whatever, where you actually have a desktop, but you also have touch. So now you have to, if you just keep track of the user agents, it's going to be crazy, right? So I know all you guys probably know Modernizer. So that's one thing that we're investing a lot as well, because that's something that you can actually detect and do something about it on the client side and not on the server. But yeah, I just wanted to mention this because
Can we talk about the ads a bit, because it does sound like it's very important. Why aren't advertising agencies, ad delivery mechanisms, why aren't they responsive yet?
well, I would say they pretty much. I can't speak for them. I just did a little bit of research, but I think that one of the main problems is that it needs to be a synchronization between the publisher and the advertisers first, because they need to do the tracking for the ads correctly, and also offer a good package for the ad to be responsive, right? Because before they were like, oh, okay, I have one ad for mobile and then I have one ad for desktop. Now it's like this crazy hybrid thing where they don't know exactly the pricing for that.
Right.
And what do you do if you actually resize the viewport and now your ad is not on view anymore, on page load? So that means that users will not actually see your ad. So
The argument against that, though, let's say you're not doing responsive design at all because of that, because of you don't want to deal with you can't deal with the advertising, and now your users are using mobile devices that are rendering the page, and they're always zooming in. They're never seeing that image, right?
Yeah.
They're never seeing that ad anyway.
yeah, I think the ad actually needs to evolve to create new ad units,
Yeah.
new ways to interact with the ad and to visualize the ad. You know, that arrow rack thing, at the right side of the page, that it's a huge flash thing. That's to me, it's just past. It's something that I think that Yahoo is fighting against for a while, but it still translates to some
I
millions.
think, just to add on to, I think a lot of it has to do with the user experience as well. Because, when you're dealing with a smaller form factor, advertisement placement is essential, as well as the size. I think, one of the companies that could really pull it off is Facebook. If you look at their Facebook experience with their advertising experience, they've been able really well to incorporate the advertising with their news feeds. And it's just really, contextually, the content is really driven. And so I think it really depends on, the quality of the experience. You're going to lose some of that, I think, when you're dealing with advertising. And that's really the thing, right? If you can solve that experience of creating a good experience with different form factors and advertising, that's where the monetization scheme comes in.
Bill, do you want
Well,
to say?
it's because I was at Yahoo in 2005 to 7, and I remember Doug and I actually spent a good bit of time with the advertising companies to explain what Ajax was.
Yeah.
It was like deja vu to me. They were behind the curve, you
Yeah.
know, because they got a revenue engine, they're going, then they've got a solution, and it takes a while to get that whole industry doing something. So it sounds like the exact same thing once again.
Well, and
with
also
responsive.
the advertising agency is not necessarily the one making the ads, right? They're collecting ads from other people, and they have to educate all those people, right?
That's
They
right.
want no
That's right.
barrier to
It's-
entry. They want
Right.
make me this image, and we will get you
Well,
money.
with Ajax, we had to change the whole way we served ads. I
Yeah.
served advertising. I mean, the before it was just on a page load. How you counted impressions. What was it was a huge change. This is actually a little less change, but it's still a very interesting one. In Facebook's case, what they're doing in that situation, they're going to adapt to. So they're getting a different ad unit based on that. But if you're actually doing responsive, I think that it's a really interesting thing. I did have a I
Yeah,
have a
go ahead,
question
please.
for Yahoo with Mojito. So one of the things I think was cool about Mojito was it really was trying to address this, how do I go across all the devices? So in this rewrite that I know Dave Glass and some others are leading, is it still taking that same approach or what?
Yeah, actually, it's just, well, I can't speak for them again.
Well, I was
work-
with Dave
I work a
few
lot-
weeks ago, so he told me about
Yeah, I
yeah,
work a
go.
lot with YY and the Mojito stack, and I worked a lot with that. I can say that Mojito is just going to have a next generation, which will
Yeah.
be
More
a
open.
little bit less, but doing more, let's say.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
It's quoting. It's
Less
less,
than
but more. I like
Yeah, I
that.
like that.
Yes.
We're actually.
I mean, less provide, because the only problem with Mojito is that at some point you would be trying to customize Mojito a lot at the
Yeah.
point that you just
Okay,
lose
what's
control.
Mojito? I mean, anybody else need that
It's
question
a,
asked?
it's an alcoholic drink. Of
Yeah,
course.
exactly.
Yeah,
What's
Ya-
Meetup? Do you wanna
Yahoo's a
start, Bill?
bunch of drunkards. They have something that cocktails. At least we're monsters. I mean, just although there is a cocktail named Kraken, by the way, so that could be a problem.
There's a cocktail for everything.
I gave a talk about 6 months ago about how virtual your dashboards on your cars are going to be the next responsive form factor. It was interesting to see, you know, what's next with these form factors, right? Like how far can it extend? Can it reach cars now? I mean, look at those new cars out right in the market with those digital dashboards. Your whole experience is ever evolving. And it's interesting.
So, I'm sorry, I wanted to get back to the mojito thing. What is it? What's the...
Well, Mojito was, I would say, the first attempt of Yahoo working with creating an MVC framework for with Node.js,
Okay.
both on server side and client side. And you could build your applications using Mojito, not only for the web, but also for mobile devices.
So we're really tuned to write it once and
Right.
be able to responsibly give it out to other
Yeah.
things. So.
And is it going away? Is it going away? Is it...
Not really. It's
Okay.
actually evolving, but taking a look at what's the industry standards
All right.
today, and you know.
So can we just mention one thing about accessibility?
Yeah, please.
Because I was chatting with Victor Sarin, who, you know, I stole from Yahoo, who leads my accessibility team, incredible guy. And he was talking about, well, in his mind, if you start thinking about responsive, you know, we just talk about layout stuff, but what's a true responsive experience, right? If your hand shakes a lot, maybe turn the animations off. You know, what happens when we maybe have screens you could actually stretch, you know? Second screen stuff, you know, where you walk in and you kind of push it to the TV or whatever. So I
And
think
aerial, for
responsive, you
example,
know,
as
is
well.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I was thinking for this device, aerial interface, I mean, if I use blind activity stuff with a
Right.
device like this, it actually makes a lot of sense. And it's not what the design purpose was, but it's really about what area you could go into.
And then sometimes people are turning off Zoom, you know, so that when you get responsive, but you can't Zoom anything. So there's a bunch of stuff that I wanted to channel him just for a minute because, you know, as a person who has accessibility needs strongly, it's something.
Isn't responsive kind of about accessibility? I mean, in the sense that they do
Can
kind
be.
of match up, right?
Except that, you know, actually, you know, I know Victor has a much better experience on his native iPhone because iOS does such a great job.
Yeah.
Now we're getting some of those
At the
things.
OS level.
Yeah, at the OS level. We're getting some of that, you know, in the web level, which is great. But it is pretty fascinating to watch. It's kind of depressing because you create an HTML5 app and yeah, you can do some of the things. You can, certainly if you work at it, but you get it right out of the box with iOS, right?
Yeah.
And by the way, speaking of that, one of the challenges that I already faced before regarding responsive was about sometimes you have one experience on desktop and then a completely different experience on a mobile device, and sometimes markup needs to change just because you know you're hiding stuff and you're changing the way the user interact, and then one of the challenges is accessibility because you would usually use like data area attributes to specify exactly what one thing is doing, but then suddenly your widget changes completely. So how do you deal with that? You know,
That's a good point.
Another point I wanted to highlight is images, right? There is no good solution for responsive images yet. And I wanted to know how you guys are doing that. Yeah.
This is
Can we mention responsive
it's
fonts?
kind of fun because my sense is that we just learned how to build the sites, and the next big frontier is how do we optimize it. We really learned what we did this year going to conferences and stuff at the end of last year, around this time last year, and one of the things that we did with our redesign was the redesign is supposed to put a whole lot more focus on the photography on the products and take the Zazzle brand into the background a lot more. We increased our page weight because we're serving up much higher resolution images. We're actually concerned about Retina devices as well. And so there are a number of solutions out there, and we're trying them all.
So
Are
you
you
have
having success anywhere? I mean, you have some hints?
Yeah, we're showing some success. It's I don't want to mention particular names necessarily, but there are a number of companies out there that are playing with CDN solutions. So if you serve your images through a CDN, some of them interface with your website with a little bit of JavaScript up on top. and it's smart enough to know the effective resolution of your device and ask for different versions of the image. One of the things that we're really good at is real-time rendering of designs. So one of the things that we can do is kind of avoid the CDN. If we run our own JavaScript on the client, we can ask our own servers for differently scaled images. There are, I think that's where it goes.
With a heavy caching level, I'm assuming.
With, yes, yes. So I think the answer lies in the CDN. And it probably lies in a combination of the CDN with some smart JavaScript running in the client.
Yes, true. I think we tried with JavaScript, but when we tried with JavaScript, the perceived performance was lacking because we are doing something with JavaScript and it was causing a janking effect on the screen. I think the ultimate solution that we are pending.
Are you speaking about sprite loading?
Not sprite, the dynamic images, right? Sprite is not a problem in general because we control it, it's static. But like websites like eBay and the other things which image saves like 60 to 70% of our internet traffic. And we need to make sure that images are optimized. And with so many high density pixels coming in, I think the CDN solution is the one that's going to work better. And I think there's a W3C proposal which says client hint as a header that goes to CDNs. And based on that, they can give whatever optimized content. So it can say it's a 1x device or a 2x device or how many over x it is.